Thank you. I understand the traffic's a little crazy tonight down by Five Corners, so we'll give people a couple of minutes to get here. Okay, Jeannie's here. We can start. Okay, let's start the meeting. To start with, just as a little very brief overview, this is our 8th time we're all getting together. I think that's more than we've had in board meetings. I mean, you know, it's so it's we've done an incredible amount of work in those 8 meetings. Just a reminder that our job is to come up with a recommendation for the board, and they will make the final decision as to what's going to happen. But just hopefully by the end of tonight, we can come to some consensus and make a recommendation to the board for the January 10th meeting. And before I forget, you are all invited to that January 10th meeting. I don't want to be the only one out there with spears being thrown. So anyway, so you're all invited, although I have 4 other board members here that can duck and weave with me. Okay.
You got your back on it.
Yeah, right. Behind me, right. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Harvey right now to go over, our sheets. See what has changed.
Okay, so as we've done each meeting, we started with this planning document, this worksheet, and anything in blue represents a change since the last worksheet from the previous meeting. We really only have a couple changes here as we've been winding down. On the front page, we've moved the bus loop item to a future project. That was what we talked about at the meeting last time. And if you go all the way to the last page, at the end, what that has effectively done is you will see in the I'll call it the yellow column, the critical need, that has afforded us the ability to increase the maximum allowable amount for the athletic complex to almost $8.5 million. So that's good news. We have also, if you look at the estimated cost for both the middle school location and the high school location to the left, that 5.7 and 5.6, for all intents and purposes, those are the same numbers. But what I can tell you is that we have sat down with Tetra Tech and the Palumbo Group, and we've scrubbed through all these numbers to make sure they're as accurate as possible. So you apply all the various contingencies and the incidentals, and you can see both of those are doable with what is now maximally allowed. So what I wanted to do at this point is turn it over to Tetra Tech, because you have another worksheet that we put together, and what it does is it compares the 2 locations. And I think it's really valuable for us to go through this, or Tetra Tech take us through this, so that you understand, again, what is actually included in each field. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
We'll just start with the drawing.
Yeah, we'll just do a quick summary of what little changes we made to those drawings. So it'll put the numbers into context a little bit better as Barb moves forward with that. On the middle school layout schematic, some of the primary changes that you'll see reflected there is addition of a bus parking area with the ability to loop through the parking lot and position themselves there. The shot put area was in that vicinity, and we moved that up to the northwest corner with plenty of room there. Another major change there was the team room, locker room building. It was quite a bit smaller, a little less than half that size, and it was decided it needs definitely be bigger in order to accommodate 2 teams. So we put a placeholder of 2,000 square feet in there, which should cover it, but that'll be refined as necessary, but it shouldn't be significantly different. In addition to that, it just reflects some sidewalk that would go around that building. And then the other minor shift in that plan was the removal of the concession stand, and instead a concrete pad for possible portable, and a combined bathroom storage building. Those are the primary changes for that particular one. And if we move to the high school plan, what you'll notice primarily is just some shifting around of certain events and the notation of others. I think the steeplechase had been kind of left out of the formula for a while, even though it was kind of there already and visual, but not very well. It was kind of missed. So that's called out. We repositioned the high jump and triple jump areas and the pole vault area to fit a little bit better within the context of the fields, and you'll see the yellow line perimeter would have them all included within the fence line. The other primary difference here is we removed altogether the concession and bathroom buildings, and instead have a concrete pad for what could be a portable concession area. those are the primary changes. If there's anything else, Barb, anything that you noted? Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to Barb here for the numbers.
Okay. Okay, so I watched the video of the public forum meeting last Thursday, and I heard multiple people saying how much they wanted to really be able to compare the two schemes. So I think you remember in previous iterations, these drawings have been stapled to individual estimates that Palumbo has prepared. So what I did was I took their latest estimates that they had sent to us in the middle of last week, and I just exported them to Excel, and I lined them up. So that's what this is. If it looks familiar, it's Palumbo's titles and numbers, but I just put them together so we can compare them. And I put them in the same order because they were in slightly different orders before. And we can just sort of go through the document and some of the highlights, and then if you have any questions. But so the left, where it says work scope, those are just the items of work. And then the middle school is the next couple of columns, and then the high school are to the right of that. And then I tried to put comments if there was something of note or particular to point out what was different about them. So just going through it, so it starts with just, they both have erosion control, they both have site preparation and demolition. And we just sort of made a note that at the middle school, we are estimating removing the existing stands, bleachers, because they don't meet ADA. So we just thought we would want to replace those. Then for site earthwork, those are a little bit different just based on cubic yardage of work. Then the synthetic turf field. So this is where things start getting different in that the fields are fundamentally different sizes. So they're both allowing for 360-foot long fields, but the middle school would remain at its current width, which would be up to 195 feet wide, which really is best conducive to football and not so much the other sports, whereas the high school field is wider, and that could be up to 225 feet, which is better suited for multiple sports. So you'll see they both have the same number for line striping for football. For the middle school, there's no number, there's no estimate for striping for lacrosse and field hockey because it doesn't really fit. So that's why that's a 0. Whereas it would fit at the high school, so that's why there's line striping for those sports at that facility. Lacrosse and field hockey, and that's right on that list. So if you see the second to last item under the synthetic turf field, it says other sports that, yeah. And I know when I did this document, I started with this, it's overwhelming. It's so much little print and everything. And then when I saw the video, the recording of the meeting, I was like, oh, nope, like throw all those concerns, like this is what they need. But it is small text, sorry. Oh, so Garrett just asked what's the difference between the red and the black. So again, this is Palumbo's, but I believe the black, so the red are the things he input. So the red just indicates he input those quantities, and the black was either a formula or something that remained the same, like the unit cost. So LS is, or EA is each, or an allowance, or CY is cubic yard. So those are just the units of measurement. So the rightmost black column under the middle school and the high school are the totals for each line item. Okay, so then field equipment. We just wanted to explain, it looks like at both the middle school and high school, there's an estimate for replacing the goalposts and pads. And again, these are loose numbers, but I did talk to our site department, and they just felt there'd be enough field disruption at the middle school that those goalposts would need to be removed to do all the drainage and everything associated with the new field, the turf. So as long as they're already removed, put something new back. And so then we talked last time about just needing the sleeves for the ball stopper fencing, We'd have the new soccer goals, and those would also attach sometimes to the football goalpost. So that is another reason to have new ones so that they could accept some soccer goals. And then just the maintenance equipment for the synthetic turf field would be the same under both. So then under site improvements, some of the differences, for example, the portable bathroom concrete pad. We just did sorry, I lost my place here. Yep, so the portable, that's the same, saying at the high school, provide a pad for the portables if wanted in addition to or in lieu of the bathrooms in the school building. So we did just today get sort of a quantity of the bathrooms in the high school nearest to the bleachers, and it does seem like between some portables and what's inside the building, we do meet all the codes. So some of that was breaking news when I was still driving, so I decided to just watch the road as opposed to thoroughly reading the email, but it looks like we're in good shape in terms of that. But it's still, oftentimes you want to have some portables just for capacity, or code even talks about X number of portables versus permanent in the building. So we still wanted to do the pad at the high school to give you the option for a maximum amount of portable restrooms. Then at both schools, we zeroed out for the permanently built concession building and just did the pad because we said we'd want the mobile concession stand, because the concession stand built new wouldn't be aidable, and it just gives you maximum flexibility as well. Then for the team locker rooms and bathroom and storage buildings, that is 0 under the high school because they can use the facilities in the high school building itself, whereas at the middle school, you would need to build it new. And I did put under the notes that that building or buildings would be unaidable. We're assuming and showing that at the middle school, you have one 2,000 square foot team room / locker room building that would have facilities in it, and then a separate building for public bathrooms and storage. Then we have a line item for reconfigured driving and parking. Those numbers are slightly different between the two facilities just because, they're different layouts and configurations, obviously. But at the middle school, we're looking at adding plus or minus 126 additional parking spots, and at the high school, plus or minus 40 additional parking spots. And then the next line item, the school bus parking, that's only needed at the middle school because you're bringing the athletes over from the high school, so we don't need bus parking at the high school. Stormwater utilities, not too much exciting to talk about there, and they appear to be pretty much exactly the same between the two buildings. Site lighting, we're assuming we'd want to go with LED lights. At the middle school, we're showing relamping the existing to remain poles. At the high school, you'd have all new 80-foot tall poles with LED lights. And then both have electrical connections for that. Then under stadium amenities, we have a scoreboard. So 0 at the middle school, the existing could remain at that facility, whereas high school would need new. Same for a flagpole. We're assuming you could reuse the existing one at the middle school. Then the stadium bleachers and the press box both have the same number of seats, both have the press box, and just the bleachers face in different directions. And just a note that the bleachers are aidable, the press box would not be. And then the others, a few are the same, the discus and the shot put. We said last time we don't need a track timing system, so that's 0 at both facilities. And steeplechase, there's just a difference in cost because you're sort of reconstructing the existing one at the middle school versus building a new one at the high school. Then in terms of the all-weather track, so at the middle school, we are hoping that we can mill, repave, and resurface the existing equilateral track versus a whole new one. Again, these are Palumbo's numbers, and I do believe I remember hearing him say at a past meeting that he's sort of budgeting on worst case scenario where you really are having to replace quite a bit of it just because of the way you've got to tie the field in with the trench drain, et cetera. So I see that his numbers for the actual track are the same between the two facilities. And I think he just said he wanted to budget for the worst case scenario. So that shows us, and he had the allowances at the bottom. So you can see that the number for the middle school was the $5,758,000, and the high school was the $5,623,000, and those numbers correlate to Harvey's sheet, and then there's all the incidentals and multipliers on top of it.
Barb, could you talk a little bit about the synthetic turf? Two things. One, we've been hearing some discussion with regards to different kinds of actual turf itself. And then there's been some concerns expressed with regards to the rubber infill.
I will not talk about it, but I will turn to my esteemed colleague, Michael, and have him talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, in terms of the types of turf, the main vendors, including 8Turf, Field Turf, and AstroTurf, and one other doesn't come to mind at the moment, but they all have pretty much comparable products in the manner in which they're built, the types of fabrics. I would have to spend a lot of time going into deep details for it, but they're relatively comparable. The infills are typically the crumb rubber for each of them as a kind of a standard practice. So in that respect, many of them are much the same. There's minor differences in terms of how they approach the recycling of these fields, but suffice to say, conversations with each of those vendors would suggest that if they don't have something in place today, they expect to have something pretty solid within the next few years. They're very confident about that. They've been working toward it. Some of this was promulgated, of course, when our recycling upheaval happened with China not accepting much of anything anymore, so people had to relook. And that's part of that relook that they're approaching there. So in terms of the cost for that, much of the cost for the recycling is related to the trucking of the material to the recycling facility. There's one vendor that has a facility that they've made arrangements with in Pennsylvania. I believe that's 8Turf, and then others will do it as well, but they might charge $30,000 to $35,000 for that recycling effort. So they all will do it, and they'll all accommodate that as best as they possibly can. Other ways that that's being done is that if their fields are in good enough shape, they can pull them up, refurbish them essentially, and they do this. They ship them overseas for use in other countries. So it's effectively a reuse, repurposing of these fields that they also do that's separate, apart from recycling. Same goes for the crumb rubber. There's facilities that have saved as much as $50,000 by simply collecting up the crumb rubber, having it cleaned, filtered, and sanitized, and then mixed in with new to lay down a new crumb rubber surface. So you don't lose all of it. You stick a large hole in the budget for that. So that's nice to do.
Okay, so I think everybody's thinking probably what I'm going to say, but are you saying that they are still using recycled used tires in some instances?
Yes,
Now,
predominantly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and my understanding is that you can also purchase virgin rubber that is not, subject to all the pollutants and things that.
Exactly. There's several different options. There's this SBR crumb rubber, which is what we're talking about. You can buy it as a coated product, so it's the same thing but coated. It's more expensive. It would cost as much as, I'm looking at a source here that was published. They say as much as $85,000 additional for the coated rubber, plus an additional $125,000 for the needed pad, because it doesn't meet the same stress factors with that particular surface. Then you got this virgin EPDM rubber infill, which I think you're talking about, which has a lot of promise, but also it's typically $85,000 additional cost and about $150,000 additional for infill and shock pad. So it's a substantially more expensive approach. Maintenance requirements are pretty much the same for that. There's also the thermoplastic elastomer infill that's out there. That also has similar additional costs for the material itself and the pad that's needed, the shock pad. But I would avoid that or suggest that be avoided because research says that that particular product will release more PAHs into the air than does crumb rubber by a substantial bit. Another approach that's being used is coated sand. Not a great idea because it breaks down and it gets heavy and it can clump over time. It's just not a good manageable product, so I won't get into that much. And there's other types of sand that are talked about that are specially processed to be round. They've had success with that. It's resistant to degradation. So there's lots of different options. Most of them are much higher cost, require additional shock pad approach. And one that I didn't mention are the organics. Some people push for the organic infills. And it sounds good at the face, but there's all kinds of issues with organics that can cause problems, including weed growth. They have to be hydrated, irrigated. They have to be replaced every 3 years, roughly, and I could go on. There's a whole bunch and a whole host of issues with organic infills that just would be a headache. So I won't go into that in detail. In terms of safety of crumb rubber, I guess I would point primarily to this New York State Department of Health Center for Environmental Health publication. It's entitled Information About Crumb Rubber Infilled Synthetic Turf Athletic Fields. And several of you may have seen this already, but it highlights a lot of the things that we would talk about in terms of health and safety, including heat stress, injury, infections, latex allergies, and chemical exposures. It kind of hits all those touch points. And just taking an order on heat stress, I'll just read off some of their conclusions, so I won't bore you with all that. Stop me if I get too long-winded, and I'll stop there. But it says, because of the potential for high temperatures on infilled synthetic turfs, it's important that people who play or work on these fields provide adequate warnings regarding the potential for heat stress, and people should be advised to remain hydrated and seek relief from heat in shaded areas. That's common sense approach to these fields. And I can speak personally to that with my own son in Pop Warner. They had Saturday practice midsummer on an artificial turf field, and it was hot as blazes. The coaches knew it. The coaches paid attention. They gave them frequent breaks. They gave them water, and they let them get in the shade during their breaks, and there were no incidents of heat stress or problems for that afternoon. So I've experienced it myself, having my son there, and my own concern about the heat. But the coaches and everybody else involved were well aware and handled it properly. That's the key there. In terms of injuries on these types of turf systems, there's been talk about them being more dangerous than natural. The reality is, with all the studies, at best, they're about equal. There's been a study that says that there's actually a somewhat lesser amount of injuries on artificial turf than on natural turf. But that can vary widely on natural turf, extremely widely, depending on the condition, day to day, year to year, and the type of turf that you're involving there. So the numbers can sway widely on natural turf. It's pretty much the same always on that artificial turf. You don't have the question mark there. In terms of infections, outdoor field temperatures are typically high enough during the regular day that they burn off infectious microbes and bacteria. There was a statement here about the survival of Staphylococcus aureus and Kentucky bluegrass, which is often used for natural fields, was found to be comparable to the survival rate on a synthetic field. So you really don't change much between natural and artificial. And there was a survey of 20 outdoor athletic turf fields and 2 natural turf fields. Didn't find any Staphylococcus on any of the playing surfaces. Those that were found and I think were somewhat reported on as if being related to that, were actually found in locker rooms, from towels, blocking pads, weight equipment, stretching table, and other such things, and on basically the hands and faces of the athletes themselves. So it wasn't the field so much as other things that came from. In terms of latex allergy, I'll just simply say that that's been studied and there's been found no evidence of any latex allergies related to crumb rubber that were found. In terms of the chemical exposures, which I think is probably the most talked about, I'll zip down here and I'll just read off one of the conclusory remarks and paragraphs about this as it was studied by the Department of Health. It says the potential for ingestion exposure to the chemicals in crumb rubber by children playing on synthetic turf has been evaluated in several studies where crumb rubber was extracted under conditions designed to mimic the human digestive tract. This type of study provides a more realistic estimate of exposure potential for chemicals contained within the crumb rubber material by simulating what chemicals in the crumb rubber are likely to be released and therefore would be available to be absorbed. None of these simulated absorption studies indicated that ingestion of crumb rubber by children would pose a significant health risk. A controlled study that fed crumb rubber to laboratory rats for 14 days and incorporated crumb rubber into their bedding material found no signs of adverse health effects resulting from the exposures. Another subtopic to there is that crumb rubber does contain zinc, and studies consistently find that zinc readily leaches from crumb rubber in greater quantities than any other substance, but the concentrations of zinc leached from crumb rubber have been found not to represent a health risk for humans. So there was an Italian study that found that inhalation exposures resulting in playing on synthetic turf are negligible, and that exposures associated with motor vehicle emissions in areas near the fields during the same time period were about 10 times higher. 2 studies that measured the metabolite of PAHs, polycyclic, forget it. Polycyclic, I know that much, in the urine of soccer players after playing on synthetic turf found no measurable uptake of PAHs resulting from the playing field. And
Michael,
yes,
I wonder if you could send that information to Harvey?
yeah, I'll send all these documents to Harvey directly.
Yeah, please.
I was collecting them over the last couple days, and
Okay.
they're very helpful, and this is just one of several that I have been able to
Okay.
look at.
Michael, for the recording, could you state the
I will. As soon as I'm finished here, with this particular summary, I'll read off very clearly what this document actually is. There was, for many years, lead in the turf grass systems. It was effectively a color adherent. It would help maintain the bright colors of these fields. Well, it became evident that that lead was dangerous to be used, and it's been banned since 2008 from the use in these fields. So you will not find lead in these fields above whatever natural currents there might be in pretty much anything you touch. So,
And I'm going to say, in the interest of time, maybe we should have that sent to Harvey, and then we can
yes, definitely.
dive into further details.
Sure.
Can I just
Do you
put
have any more
a high-end
questions?
bow on it? Because just I think the most important points that were mentioned. So we'll review all of the information on crumb rubber, but if it is deemed that the committee or the board wants to go with an alternate, it seems it would be about $235,000 all in for, you mentioned like virgin rubber fill, 85 grand plus the $150,000 pads. I mean, personally, in a project that is $23 million, that I would not categorize that as a significant increase. So I think at the very least, we have options if we determine that we don't want to go the crumb rubber route.
There are most certainly options for that. And again, the study for which I was just summarizing was the New York State Department of Health, Center for Environmental Health, and the title was Information About Crumb Rubber Infilled Synthetic Turf Athletic Fields. Okay? And if there's any follow-up questions, I'll be happy to refer to some other things.
One other question that was raised at the forum was about the drainage of synthetic turf field turf. Can you just comment briefly, what's the comparison? Does it compare to natural grass? Does grass drain more? Does this drain more? Is it about equal?
The amount of surface drainage is a bit increased in these fields over natural grass because natural grass has a tendency along with the soil underneath it to absorb a certain percentage of that runoff. Artificial turf fields are treated for stormwater purposes similar to a solid surface parking lot. Not quite, but close. That's how it's treated for stormwater management purposes. Depending on the type field, there's opportunities to do some storage beneath the field. We try to limit the amount of that storage beneath the field because it just can potentially cause problems. But if you do it in the right way and not maximize it for just the sole purpose of maximizing, it can be successful. And then the standard control mechanisms for stormwater handling are requirements by state rules. We can't just let it go for the sake of letting it go. There's requirements that we have to abide by under the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan rules and regulations at DEC.
And for those watching, since they can't see our sheets, I'm noticing approximately upwards of $500,000 put just to drainage, so a significant amount of time and attention to both locations to really take care of that drainage that was raised, like Jim said, in the last form. So even if one is more than another, synthetic versus natural, this is a significant improvement to what we have at either location by far. So upwards of $500K just into making sure the drainage is appropriate for our athletes and our surrounding neighbors.
I think the summary is, in a wholesale fashion, the rain that hits the field does not leave and go down the road to some neighbor's property. It's
No.
detained in our site-specific drainage profile and handled by our internal drainage systems, and then distributed, to the municipal system that's down the road from us. So, in a wholesale fashion, our water doesn't leave our site.
No, it will not exceed the rate that it leaves now. That's by state rules.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions before we move on?
Just for the record, probably about 95% of all FCS teams play on AstroTurf right now, or some type of turf. And the schools that have a lot of money, the BCS schools, about 50% of them play on artificial turf. Probably about 20, 21, I believe, NFL teams play on artificial turf. The ones that aren't are probably in good weather. We don't have good weather. So, and I think the original estimate for natural grass was about 1.6 by you guys. With the water rate that we currently pay here, it's probably cost about between $500 and $600 to water the field one time, 1 inch. So.
Thank you. Okay. So we have the updated costs in front of us, and where we're left at now is taking a look at pros and cons of locating the complex at the high school or the middle school. And I think that's kind of where we're at the moment. We've talked about some of the pros and cons over the past probably 3 or 4 meetings. And I think now we have to really, we're going to put them down. I've got my scribe over here is going to be, is going to be writing down, and then we can review some of the thoughts that are out here. But I'd like us to go around and reiterate some of the things that we have already said, but now we can consolidate it into one meeting here. Jeannie, well, let's start at that end.
Can I go first, just because I'm going to be writing everyone's down?
Why don't you go first?
I appreciate that.
Okay, fine.
You often get volunteers.
Yeah, okay.
So, both plans, and yeah, I'll go first because I'll remember what I have to say and I'll write it down at the end. A couple cons for me are the one-sided stands in general. I think that is a trend for now, that will come and go as the future, as the future comes about. I think that's a con, having, both visitors and home and one stands. The high school orientation, I'd love to find a way to not have the stands block the high school, meaning when you're in the high school, all you're going to see are stands, the back of stands versus your field. It'd be wonderful if we could figure out how to reverse those. So that's not necessarily, I mean, it's a con, it's my personal con. A con for the middle school is big giant one for me is Walter and his whole department does not want traffic around the back of that or past his facility there. He's said it multiple times. He's not a huge fan of that. Pros, I think our interim AD spoke volumes about the pros of having the field at the high school and all the soft costs, or the really hard costs, but all those fringe costs that are the arm length of fringe costs that you rattled off on the top of your head would be mitigated should the high school be the area of focus. And I could go on, but I'll begin to write now.
Okay, I'm just going to say that, and move back to what I did, and I surveyed the coaches and asked the coaches for their input, and by and large, the coaches' wish was to have it at the high school, that the site at the high school afforded more athletes access to the field because it was wide enough for multiple sports. It's a multi-use field. That's a true multi-use field. The soccer, even though the middle school says that it's a turf soccer and football field, the soccer field is only 195 feet. So it's much shorter. It's really just at the bare minimum, and that's not really fair to the athletes who would be playing on that field. I think when you look at more bang for your buck and what the fields can provide for our students, the high school is probably the most efficient way. So that's what I'm going to go back to.
I have said all along, I believe it belongs at the high school for a variety of reasons. I think we listed a lot of them. Right now, you have every sport playing at the high school, with the exception of football, which the varsity football will play 4 to 5 games on that field. The middle school is in session. The elementary school is in session. You are now going to disrupt every other sport that we have if you put it at the middle school versus staying at the high school. The kids can do all their workouts. They work in the free weight room. They do yoga and meditations. They do classroom work. And then they go out and do their practice. And that all would be disrupted because now they're going to be shifted to the other building. Again, I will say, if you're making it a multi-purpose field for everyone to use, which is what you should do, you have over 500 student athletes participating based on your participation survey filed with the state. So if you're going to consider all of the student athletes, you have to consider all of the sports that they participate in. And the high school field does that. To put them at the middle school, you've already now said that lacrosse isn't going to work there. Our high school soccer team is not going to want to play on a much narrower field than what the other high schools play on. They play for the max, and that's what the tournaments are, that's what your postseason is, that's what your state tournaments is, and every soccer game you want is on the maximum number of field. It changes the game. I agreed with what Lynn said, that kids had an opportunity to belong to other things and be able to go out and watch the game or be able to go out and practice. They wouldn't be able to do that. And I think game management-wise, it is definitely easier to maintain and for safety and game management at the high school than it is at the middle school based on my experience this year. The bleachers, most bleachers are on the same side. It's sorry to say, it's rare that you get a second set of bleachers. It is manageable there. The high school addresses many of your issues as far as the other fields and your tennis courts and the facilities, and you're not disrupting any middle school or any elementary school. So.
Thank you. Nancy?
My first question is, have we, and I might have missed this, so I apologize, but did we ever come up with a cost of the busing the kids from the high school, all those teams over to the, we did, and I must maybe, I don't know if I wasn't here, or rough, like, what does that cost? Do we? About $15,000. For the year, okay.
Yep.
How long will the fields not be usable once, or if, once the fields we start this, is it, I'm just kind of curious on that. Is that like a
It depends. It could be one fall season. It depends on when they start the actual project.
okay,
So it would probably be a year.
okay. In general,
Well, that deserves clarity, because the turf version, the grass version
Is 2 years.
is a two full
Yeah, no, I remember,
growing
yeah.
seasons.
Yep.
Whereas the artificial version, you know, if you have a good winter, you can work through, but in general would be your fall season. You'd do
Yeah.
one single fall season
Right.
of football you'd miss.
Okay.
Right.
I think it's time that we try to change our mindset and we look to the future. I think that putting this field and doing the renovations at the high school is looking to the future, and it's also looking to the present for our coaches and our athletes, and they can enjoy their school and stay there, and the school is in Cornwall. Just to clarify that, it is in the town of Cornwall. So I definitely would support the field being at the high school. Thank you.
All right, so this is a very difficult decision to make. So I'd like to start, I think having it at the high school definitely looks at and puts the students first. And I think it's truly a multi-sport field. We can't solely look at one sport over the other, whether that's football, soccer, lacrosse. We have to really look at them equally, because in the end, we have to treat everybody the same. Definitely a con with the middle school is we need to build locker rooms. At the high school, we have all those facilities available to us already. I think at the high school, it gives students a lot more freedom to, you know, commingle with their friends and attend games and practices. And it also helps them with their studies, because if they have to stay after school for help, they're not going to miss their bus to go to their practice at the middle school, or they're not going to miss the bus to go to a game if they need to stay with their teacher for a few minutes after school. So I think it definitely helps and increases, you know, the student life at the of their high school. I think an important thing to remember and to keep in mind is that, you know, there's always this debate about, well, the middle school now was the old high school and this and that. This is our students' high school, and I think they should be proud of it, and I think we should move on, and we should really look towards the future. And that was my high school, and I'm proud of it. So I think it's time that we really treat it like our high school. Thank you.
Thanks. So a few points to make. Do I think this would pass, or I'm sorry, do I think this makes sense at the high school? Yes. But I've been very clear and kind of transparent about how I feel about the whole thing in general. I think the latest survey, and what I appreciate, the survey that we did a while ago, the latest one done with the coaches would indicate that they're looking for more of a two-field option. And I'll give you a real-life application of it, too. My brother is a varsity football coach at John Jay East Fishkill, and they put a new turf field in 5 years ago. And he said the biggest regret they have is that they fight constantly for time at that field. It's just, this is real-life application. I worry that this is going to happen here. I worry that we won't get maximum use out of it. And that's the only reason why I proposed maybe going to or looking at kind of a side-by-side like this and seeing what would it take to be able to get a second field at the middle school. Now, when I say at the middle school, I don't know if I look at this as like, and I don't want to say bare minimum, but I just want to see a field there. We don't need concession stand. We don't need locker rooms. Those are all phase down the road projects. They're also things that could be done via fundraising. I can't tell you the amount of people that said to me in the community, tell me what we have to do and we'll do it. We'll get together and we'll make it happen. Because it really is, and I said this the other day, it really is about the kids. And I don't want to see, as my kids get older, them not being able to go on a beautiful new field because they don't have the time to do it, or they're practicing at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night. And then we talked about that, a while back as well. So I think that part of me says, too, the blunt reality of it is, will this even pass if we put it in front of people and say we want it at the high school? I don't know that, I'm not a believer that that's true yet. I don't, just based on real life conversations that I've had with people. So my only question there, and I don't know if those are pros and cons, mostly cons, I don't know, but I'm just trying to put a real spin on it. My only question would be, if we looked at a bare minimum at the middle school, because I also do have a problem with the cost to the final cost. There's about $3 million on both projects that are baked in with incidentals, and I've been very transparent about that too. I'm not a buyer of those costs because it's a wide gap. So would this be bare minimum to get a field on the middle school? Forget, reduced, we reduced the stands that we want to put there. We forget about the locker rooms. We forget about the concession stands and just get a field there so we can have ample, what the coaches want, what, time, sharing wise. I mean, I'm just trying to throw some ideas out there. I'm not trying to make official proposals, but I'm just trying to get everyone thinking, so.
Can I do a stab at just the way I looked at Tom's question? I had my calculator out since I had heard this feedback. So just for turf field at either location, so just the turf field, I looked at site preparation must be included. So add that up, that's approximately $40K. 1.3 million for both actual fields, so that's 1.3 plus 40K. Stormwater improvements, we know our community is not going to allow us to go forward without that. I already said that was about 500K, so now we're getting about 1.9. So that was kind of where I came in, was 1.9 would be just the field plus the stormwater plus the demo for the construction. Earthwork, right, so probably 2.
Yeah, and erosion control and.
And then I looked at it as my only thought process was looking at it as a pool of cash, of an allocation of money, $8.5 million. And just how can we mix and make things work? And that's all I was trying to say, is just trying to just maximize the dollars. But while not cutting corners, I want to make that clear. There's by no means am I saying cut corners to make it work, just trying to maximize the dollars.
Brendan.
So I'm going to answer this based on if we had to choose, because I think this is a separate discussion to do too. And this is the first I've seen numbers for it, so I'm not ready to process it. Yeah, I think they. I certainly went into this 3 months ago now, thinking to myself, it'll probably be at the middle school, you know, because that's where it's been. But the more that I've learned about it, and I'm going to echo a lot of what other people have said, it seems to me that the middle school proposition clearly benefits football, but it's actually degrades the experience for all the other athletes. I mean, currently, none of those other athletes are getting on a bus to go to a home game. If we assume that they would have a state-of-the-art facility at their high school, I think it would be a much better experience for them than if it were at the middle school. And there's just a lot more non-football athletes than there are football athletes. And these things always come down to tough choices, and I would love to, we have an extraordinary football program full of great people, and as much as I would like to give them what they want, we have a responsibility for the district as a whole and the athletes as a whole. And I think that the clear math says that the high school facility would benefit more athletes. And, you know, one of the rationales we've heard a lot through the community forums and things like that is the middle school, putting the field at the middle school is keeping it as it is. But as I said, it's actually, that would be uprooting almost the entire athletic programming and putting it at the middle school. It would only be keeping the football program as it is. But everything else the entire program for lacrosse, field hockey, soccer, I mean, all of these things would have a drastic sea change. And so that would cause disruption that I don't know if everyone is frankly ready for. As far as, you know, would it pass? Certainly, you know, Tom, as we've seen, you know, there's been a vocal argument for the middle school, and just again, going back to the numbers, I ask myself, would 400 plus athletic parents vote against a facility that would benefit their kids? I mean, I don't think so. None of us, this is all conjecture, right? And we can say, well, who shows up and all that, but based solely on that, I would have to imagine at the least it would be, at the worst it would be a wash. If anything, it might benefit the high school. And the idea of two fields, I support the idea of two fields. I don't know yet if it's feasible to do it in this one project, though. I could definitely see a world where we go for a second field on a subsequent bond. And then it becomes a question of, you know, do you want to do two fields halfway now, or do you want to do one facility, make it perfect, and then come back for a second facility later and make all those choices then? I am cautious about doing anything halfway with the assumption that we'll go back and do it right later, because, you know, that day just might not come. So that's why even within those two options, I would lean toward doing one properly now with the understanding that this is still on our horizon for, I don't know, a few years out, let's say. Yeah, but, you know, I think a multi-sport field at the high school would be a big win for the district as a whole. And although it may not be what some of us had initially thought we would end up as, I think that it would be hard not to spin it as anything other than a great victory for the district.
So a lot of great thoughts have been shared, and I don't want to rehash everything. I think the two field idea, Tom, that you brought up, it would be great if we could do that. 2 meetings ago, we were sitting at the numbers staring, going, we can't do any field. So luckily, Walter, who's not here tonight, did a tremendous job to move some things back and say, hey, we can do this in-house, we can hire some personnel. So I think the fact that we're even doing one is a win. I agree with Brendan. We can't do anything halfway because we're sitting here right now looking at why didn't they build a field 20 years ago when they built the high school? So to say, yeah, we're going to come back and do it later, maybe 20 years later. So I don't think anybody wants to do that. I do echo your sentiments, Brendan, though, that this is, step one in a long-term plan. Terry, in his presentation at the board last night, laid out, monies that are going to be coming available in the, mid 4 to 5 year range, and then the 8 to 9 year range when the high school bond comes off. So certainly in there, I think, I don't think we need a full stadium in 2 locations, but certainly wherever we don't build a full stadium, this location, that other field, that can that be upgraded in a future plan. So I would love to see it at the middle school, and I came into this committee and I would have been 95, maybe 99% saying let's keep it at the middle school. But the more that I've learned, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes sense to put it at the high school. That's where the athletes are. It's a wider field. It covers all the sports. Brendan, you laid out the case of it's better for all the athletes, and at the middle school, it's really only better for football. If we do it at the high school, it's better for football too. It's a big improvement if they have a beautiful stadium to play at the high school versus the conditions they're playing at now. So it's a big improvement for the football team as well. We didn't. Nancy, you covered the transportation of $15,000 a year, which would be saved not having it at the middle school. We didn't go through the numbers, but Jen, you raised it in an earlier meeting. We're talking 6-7 football games a year versus it was something out of 60-70 games when you factor in soccer, lacrosse,
Right.
everything else.
All the other sports.
Right. So we're talking 10x the number of games. So, yeah. And as Richard said, he said, it's my high school and I'm proud of it. I'm one of the last classes to graduate from the middle school when it was the high school, and I'm getting up there. So,
Does that mean you only graduated middle school?
if I only graduate, correct.
That's right.
Go back and check the papers, yeah. So, the high school's been out there for 20 years. The students today don't know anything about the old high school, so it's probably time to move on. I don't love it, but my heart and my head are conflicted, let me put it that way. So.
Dave?
First of all, the coaches' plan that we spent a lot of time on called for 2 fields, and we had all the coaches agree on it except for one who never responded to the email. So the coaches were in favor of 2 fields. They were in favor of a less elaborate $7-8 million being spent in any one place when we could probably do 2 fields for around $4 million apiece. I think the one question that nobody ever asked is, will it pass? And I don't think it will pass. I know as a village trustee, and I'm not wearing that hat tonight, I'm wearing a football hat tonight. But as a village trustee, we all spoke against moving it out of town. When the school was built, they said that they would never move football. That was part of the deal when they built the school out there. Someone reiterated that the other night at the forum, and that was exactly what they said. It affects the businesses. It affects all the businesses in town. This isn't just a single field. This is a multi-purpose field that should be being used all the time. I think we need 2 fields. Football's been in town since 1958. I think there's things that could be extrapolated out of this plan. I don't think we need, all of a sudden we decided after 63 years that we need $1 million worth of parking. Why do we need $1 million worth of parking? That's a waste of taxpayers' money. We downplay the transportation issue. The transportation issue out there is huge. I drive a bus every day. It's awful. It's awful. You can't sugarcoat the transportation issue out there. How about the continuity of the youth program, which, there's builders and there's inheritors. There's builders and there's inheritors. We built the program from scratch. Tommy Fanning played football in Highland Falls because we didn't have a team that year. So this program was built from scratch. And to lose that continuity, which we will lose, because We practice on Friday night, so we're not going out there for that game. We have 100 cars with people getting dropped off. Those kids aren't going to get dropped off at the high school. Parents aren't going to drop their kids off at the high school. You can't walk in, you have to try to drive in. I think we're downplaying the traffic. Yeah, you add some spaces, but with the footprint of 1,250 seats, you lose some spaces too. It's the idea of spending $7, $8 million that doesn't benefit the local community. Does it benefit the students in that school? Absolutely. Nobody's denying that. You could walk out and be on the field. But when there's a soccer game, where's the football team practicing that day? On grass? Are they going to practice 7 o'clock at night? When are they practicing? Every person that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of people, probably more than, except for you people, more than anybody in this room, has said, you show me a school with one field, and I'll show you a constant battle to get on that field. And we talk about how many teams we have, and it's a problem. It's a problem. As far as the transportation, the bus company sends 2 shuttle buses back to the school every day anyway. And the lacrosse, they already practice and play on the middle school field as it is anyway. Modified does. So, I mean, the middle school is getting used. As far as the mixing of the students, they don't?
No, I said we don't have modified lacrosse yet.
Well, they play lacrosse games on the middle school field. I've been there when they played.
They play on the soccer field.
Right.
On the side of the.
Right,
yeah.
right. Well, I'm just saying general in field. Yeah, the field doesn't get used for anything but football now. I realize that. I just think that we need 2 fields, and we need to keep football in town. Mr. Hilaire raised a question the other night, what do the kids think? And I wasn't even going to bring it up, but because he asked, I answered. And the kids took a poll, and every kid on the team except for one said that football should stay in the middle school. Every kid but one. So you could either believe it or not, but I'm telling you what they said. All the coaches want football to stay in town. If I'm wrong, somebody can, we have a coach right here. If somebody thinks that I'm wrong about that, we could talk about that. I just think that we need 2 fields, and it's up to them who work for us, respectfully, obviously. I like you people, so. It's up to them to find a way, and I know they can. And listen, I have restrained myself in this process. Trust me when I tell you that. I haven't written a letter. I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything. But I really believe that the program will suffer if we move football out of town. It won't happen right away, but I've seen it happen in other towns, and it took us a long time to get there. Port Jervis moved out of town and came back so fast to town because people stopped going to the game, the crowds went down, and they are back on their original field. By the way, we would be the only team in Orange County that's not playing on their original football field, except for Goshen, who didn't have enough room to build a stadium, wanted to build a stadium on their original football field, but didn't because they didn't have enough room. We would be the only one not playing on our original field. So there's something about that tradition. There's something, well, the kids said that. The kids said that. So, I'm probably, maybe I'm the only one, but I'm certainly not the only one in the community. I can tell you that. I can tell you that. Cornwall Youth Football, our board is against moving football. There's a lot of other organizations that are against moving football. That's all I have to say.
Okay, I guess it's kind of up to me now. I had a couple of observations. I think a second field would be excellent, and perhaps a way to do it might be to making as an alternate in this project, that if it comes in, well, we say round numbers of $2 million, if we can save $2 million in the bid process, we can afford a second field. If we as a committee feel that that second field is that important, then look back at the other stuff and cut $2 million out of bathrooms and roofs. Now, I'm just saying that's a possibility. We did take away the new bus loop. I too am concerned about building a facility that is not, with the idea that going down the road will finish it. We have a high school that was built that way, and we still pay the price for it. That I think one of the things, one of our main charges is that we have to put the kids first. And all the years I've been on the board, has always been my goal, is the kids come first. Putting it at the high school puts the kids first. I hear what you said, Dave, that somebody did a survey and asked the football team where would they like to be. And the football team kids have said they want to be where they've always played. We could do surveys of virtually any team and get what we would like them to say it, depending on how you make your survey. So I'm not saying I would discount that, but I have a hard time. If we went to the soccer team and said, where would you like to play soccer? Would they say the middle school? Probably not. So it's my kids went to the middle school as a high school. And in talking to them, they've all said, because they have now had their own kids go through the high school, and we've now had a full generation of kids going through that high school without having the same kind of pride that the people that went through the middle school as a high school had. And that pride is missing. And I think this facility would help bring that pride back to the high school. Yes. Do I like going to the middle school football games? Yeah, I can walk there. No argument. When I go to Goshen games, nobody walks there. They all drive. When I go to Highland Falls games, nobody drives there. Or nobody walks there. They all drive. So that we've been, I guess it's been a luxury, if you will, that we've been doing it all these years, that we could walk to the 4 games or the 5 games that we play, that people go to. To me, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make economic sense. If this were to be voted down because, well, let me back up a minute. Dave, you had said something about you practice Friday night. What's stopping you from practicing at the middle school Friday nights? No, right. I'm not arguing that point. It makes it, and if in fact.
All right, let's respect the process and have everyone have their.
I'm not, first of all, you don't have to go through 5 corners. You don't have to go through Five Corners. You know, that's, all right, let me finish. So if we could find a way to either make it as an alternate and put in a $2 million alternate, or the same way that we have made phase twos here and promised that that's what we will do in phase two, that in phase two, we say we will turf the field at the middle school, and make that as a hard recommendation back to the board and say, listen, we know this round we can only afford one, but within the next 2-3 years, we can start the process and get a turf field at the middle school. In the meantime, and Harvey, don't hit me, I did some quick subtracting here, and we're talking $300,000 that's left over from the 8.4 and the 8.0, give or take. Use that money to refurbish the middle school field now. Put topsoil on it. At least until we can get 2-3 years down where we can afford to put turf in. The same way that you feel that the bond would go down if we were putting in at the middle school, which incidentally, the last 2 bonds proposed it at the middle school. Putting in 2 turf fields in this bond, I'm not sure would guarantee its passing. I don't like bringing up the past because we've been moving very much forward on this. Yes. Oh, not the right way. You would end up with a field, period. And that's not, you got to get rid of our bleachers. We have to replace them. We have to, I mean, we'd also have to put bleachers up at the other end. We need, how many times have you heard people saying we need bathrooms at the middle school? We need the bathrooms. We're not going to end up with $4 million here and $4 million there and coming up with an appropriate facility in either place. We'll have 2, you should pardon the expression, and whoever's listening, 2 half-assed projects. We will not have a good project and then with a follow-up to make the next one also. My opinion. Okay. Where do we go from here?
Recommendation time.
Would you like me to
Yes,
just
let's,
summarize this to
yes,
a degree?
please do.
Okay, some of the, I wrote them all down. I wrote them all down, all of what I could register and write. So I have cons for both places. More pros written for the high school than I heard for the middle school. Some of these items will go to the high school. I heard it's a coach's desire. These are bullets, so they're not going to be sentences. Coach's desire. I get that multiple surveys went out. It's tentatively subjective, the information, so take that for what it will. Access by players from the support rooms in the high school. They can come out of their weight rooms and yoga rooms, I guess there is, and come to the game as opposed to a disjoint with transportation. Access by fellow students from the high school. Pros, I have game management. Oh, ease for the game's management because it's not the transition. They can go from their locker room to the field. The commingling of students increases the student life. Student pride was brought up. there are more non-football athletes than there are football athletes, thus greater use of the field. Full district benefit, great victory. Athletes are at the high school. That was another one I wrote down. And it's a wider field. Cons for the high school is it won't get its max use because of field conflicts. That has to be managed. A couple will not pass, but the bond will not pass, or may not pass. I should say the bond may not pass if it goes to the high school. Parlayed off of the more non-football athletes, student use. So parlayed off of the pro of student use is the opposite of that, where it's going to get more use and thus more wear and tear. Traffic and parking was a major con. I kind of have an exclamation point next to that one. Pros for the middle school, I heard it supports the village and village businesses. It has been suggested that there's greater community support for the middle school. Miscellaneous survey responses, pro it for the middle school. Cons is you can't stripe it for all the sport teams that we currently have. Con was access route for Walter's facility. There's access for high school games while middle school and elementary school are still in session. Not all athletes can attend easily. Narrower field for soccer games. Locker room access. Someone said it degrades the experiences of other athletes because of their access or lack of access to that field. Relocating all sports teams to the access field would have to happen. If you want to use the field, you get if you're in the high school, you have to dislocate yourself to get to the field. So those are what I wrote down. And I would just add that in all instances, change is very difficult, but time heals all. Time heals all. No one wanted to bring their ShopRite bags to ShopRite to go shopping, but they do now. They do. So, and I will add that it's incumbent upon this group to not propose what we believe will pass, but what we believe is right and fiscally responsible for the community and all of our taxpayers. So to propose something because we think it'll pass, I don't believe is the right decision. Then we're all not holistically doing our job. So that's the pros and cons summary. Larry, take it from here.
Thank you. That's an excellent point you make. I think we need to make recommendation to the board and let the board make the decision. Do they do something because to get it to pass, or do they do what's right? I have a question. Do you think people would vote down the entire bond if it was at the high school? And that strikes me as incredibly self-serving. But on the other hand, that happened last time. That the bond was voted down, although I'm not really sure why. It cost money. And the first bond was 40 million, the second bond was 20 million. This bond doesn't cost, well, it doesn't do any additional taxes. This bond costs money, but it doesn't do any additional taxes. I would be terribly disappointed in our community if it got voted down just because a facility is being placed at the high school. I would be surprised about that. But I think we're at a point now where we need to come to some consensus as to what we're recommending to the Board of Education on January 10th. And again, I would suggest you all be there and perhaps express an opinion when asked, when it comes up, because it will come up. Nancy, do you wanted to say something?
I think it was very clear that and going around and listening. I mean, everybody's input is so welcomed and so appreciated. I think we need to, as a committee, we need to respect the decision. And if we as individuals don't agree, that's fine. And each point of view is so respected because each of us brings such an important point of view. But it's equally important not to attempt to derail any of this because you may not agree with the majority. And I think that becomes just a critical piece. Hearing, for myself, hearing different points of view, and I've said this before, hearing from Kate, hearing from Jen. Jeannie, thank you for your point of view that you brought and the coaches. And Richard, your point of view is amazing. I mean, everybody's point of view is so well appreciated, but different points of view that I have not heard before is so appreciated by me personally. But I think we need to just kind of look at all of it, and we need to say, Larry, like you said, even if we feel this, we have to understand that maybe this is what's best for our students, and that this is their high school. And so we know I could go on, but everybody, all the time and energy that everyone has put into this is so appreciated. But I think that we need to make the right decision for the kids.
So I just want to circle back to something you said, Larry, and I wonder if this is the seed of some sort of consensus. The idea of including a middle school field in some larger plan. I don't know if we wanted to talk about that as a group. I mean, it's an idea that is certainly consistent with how we've approached other parts of this project, things that don't make the cut, so to speak. We say, all right, it's still on our horizon. Because, I mean, I agree. I mean, part of it is, I don't want to, I want everybody to be a winner here. A lot of times it just becomes a matter of when and in what order. So if we could address that, I know I would support that. We obviously can't get so specific that we say this is going to be the facility in X number of years, but just to list it as a priority and assure the community that, we're not forcing the football team to uproot its entire program to the high school. I mean, I can imagine a world. I mean, to me, there's so much energy to we want to play at the middle school because of tradition. So it almost becomes a question: do you want to play at a turf field at the high school, or do you want to play at the middle school? If this is the recommendation, and if there is a plan to get a turf field at the middle school in some amount of time, that could help the football program make that decision for themselves. But if we had to do one first, which I don't want to rehash what we said before, it just doesn't seem like we should move the entire athletic program over to the middle school and then make another field in a few years and move them back, But if we can include that as part of a long-term plan, I think that could help potentially generate some consensus.
Jim, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question to Brendan, because originally you said larger plan, but at the end you said long-term. Your comments tracked with long-term. I think you meant long-term.
Yes.
Larger meaning we're not going to expand the scope of this plan to more dollars. I believe you meant
Correct.
long-term. I just want to clarify.
Larger is in,
Long-term.
long-term, larger timeframe, yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
Perhaps in redoing the sheets and adding a future project 2 and adding a second field and having the discussion as to when we can actually pull that off.
So my recommendation would be, we definitely need to make a decision tonight on location. The second turf field can go into phase 2. I just want to be clear with everyone here in the community. There's some other decisions that the Board of Education is going to need to make, like if we started up another capital reserve, how much would that be? that plays a lot into phase two and decisions that the community and the board would make later. So my recommendation would be we have a lot of things in phase two. I agree that this could be a top priority as we look at what phase two could look like, but maybe make a recommendation for location tonight, knowing that second turf, wherever the stadium is not, would be into a phase two for future action.
That makes sense. I was just looking at our future projects. 2 is almost 19 million. You add the second field to that, you almost have the exact same size bond as we're looking at this time. And we managed to fund our capital reserve in 3 years? In 3 years. Now, there were some extenuating circumstances that allowed that to occur, but if the state really does say what they're going to, really does go back to the formula and we do get some extra funds that way, we may very well be able to do this again in 3 years. So that's not an impossible direction. So, yes, sir.
Just a process question for Terry or Harvey. If we were to append on, or in addition to a vote on a capital project, have a vote for a new capital reserve, what's the timeline? Is the timeline the same? Like we need to have, as a full board, we need to vote on this project in January so we can have that vote in May. For a capital reserve, do we need to have that discussion in January as well, or can we do that at a later, in February or March or something?
That discussion does not have the same legal requirements time-wise as the actual project itself, so you have much more time.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else I'd like to say? At this point, yes, Tom.
I'll say something real quick. So I'm going to piggyback off kind of what Nancy said a little bit. So I think the responsibility of this committee is to do what's best for the kids. So my biggest fear, well, I'm going to support whatever this committee decides because I know that we all have their best interest in mind. So I was just simply throwing some additional ideas out there, see if it stuck. Again, I'm all about future planning, so I'm going to support the hell out of this project, no matter if it's high school, middle school, because like I said, my biggest fear is this doesn't get done at all. And then what happens? My kids are getting older. I like going to these athletic events more than anyone. And so I'll support whatever this group comes to, and we'll continue to think about the long term. Another thing to keep in mind too is that these are just estimates. We could come in above, below. We'll know kind of real time how we're playing out pretty quickly. So you never know in the future as this is going through. We could be a few million under. I'm just throwing it out there. These are just estimates. I've seen it happen all the time. Budget versus actuals, variance analysis, the whole deal. So you just never know. So my point is I'm just going to support whatever this group has and whatever we decide. And I hear your point. So
Just as an observation, I've been watching a number of districts with their capital projects, and invariably, all except one that I can think of, had built in enough contingencies so that they did not have an issue with the end of the project and did have money left over to do alternates. There was one district that had to go back to the public and ask for another couple of $1 million. I never want to get to that point. And so whatever you have built into the contingency funds, I'm confident that there will be money, whether it be 2 million or 1 million or what, money that will have a cushion that we'd be able to get the project completed, perhaps with extras. Anybody else have anything to say? Yes.
I do have something ever so briefly. Harvey, so hypothetical situation. Everything clicks the way we'd like it to click, middle or high school, irrelevant from my point. And we also ask the public to fund another capital reserve, can we access the money in the capital reserve at any point in time? I mean, if you fund it for two of the 5 years, can you draw on that before the 5 years is up?
You can, but the one thing about a capital reserve is you need voter approval to put money in, and you need voter approval to pull money out. So that's the key.
Okay.
You have any other questions, comments? All right, at this point, we had consensus at the last meeting of everything but the athletic facility. And I'm going to take that as face value, saying that that is what this committee will be recommending to the board. The question becomes then is the athletic facility. And I'd like to take a vote as to where we would like to have the facility placed. Perhaps, let me back step one. Thought just hit me with what Brendan was saying. Whichever facility does not, whichever location does not get the facility, I would propose that we put into this sheet on phase 2 that field gets, okay, gets it. All right, I have a consensus on that. Okay. All right, now I'd like to take a vote on the location of the field, and I'm not going to go around making people sweat. You just you want to, by a raise of hand, those that would like it at the middle school, please raise your hand. Those that might like it at the high school, please raise your hand. Thank you. All right. As Nancy said, and I'm going to go back, I do know why the last 2 bonds failed. One of the main reasons was once a decision was made and the board decided to move forward with it, not everyone supported it on the board and actively worked against it. I would hope that does not happen out of this group.
What about letting the people vote on the athletic piece?
You mean the high school and the middle school?
Yeah.
No, that's why, I personally believe that's why we have a Board of Education. And we're going to give it, we're going to leave it up to the board.
I'm just making a
No,
suggestion.
you know, if anything, the board may very well say, let's break the bond into 2 pieces.
Be fine with that.
You know, an athletic piece and the everything else piece. I would hate to see that at this point, but it could very well be, and there may be some logical reasons for that. But to ask the public as to where to put it, I think at this point, we've gotten a good deal of input, and we have a 9-member board, which is larger than most boards in the area, have been elected by the public. We have to hope that they will represent what they feel is right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. And I would like you to please come to the January 10th meeting. This has been a difficult process, and I truly appreciate all that you've done. Thank you.
Can I just say we appreciate your leadership on this too, Larry, and Harvey, Terry, the Tetra Tech crew, Palumbo. I know we've gone back and forth a whole bunch of times, asking for a whole bunch of different revisions and numbers. So Walter, who had a walk-off home run last week with his updated proposal. So thanks all around.
And the entire committee.